Hello, you're watching Avenue X. I usually do Chinese drama related review videos on this channel and I've been doing it for 8 years. I guess the reason you clicked into this video is because you want to know more about that light rail or monorail station in Chongqing. And because recently this famous guy has just done a 6-hour long live stream in my hometown city. I think now this is probably the most famous light rail station in the world. Since I've heard so many stories and nobody actually had the definitive version of it, I should come out and just tell you guys why it exists in that way. So let's get right to the point, what happened, and then look at my time code. I will let you know how I know the story and other interesting things that most people wouldn't know about the Lighting Up Chongqing project that started back in 1990s. And then a little bit at the end, just for my channel's regular viewers, because if you know Chinese dramas, that will be kind of an interesting thing for you to know, but if not, it's completely irrelevant. So let's get into the part of how this monorail station got built in this weird way that it goes through a residential building. These days when people talk about that, they would assume this is a genius planning that happened and they wanted to make this spectacular thing for the cityscape, which is totally not true. It was actually miscommunication, weird timing, that caused this thing to basically ended up being what it is today. Nobody actually had any foresight of the fact that 20 years later, after it got built, it became a point of interest for tourism, for people around the world to come to Chongqing to see. Still, to this day, I think it baffles most of the Chongqing locals. So, back in the 1990s, that was when Chongqing is starting to plan its subway station, but Chongqing is a very specific and interesting city, as you have seen in the live stream. It has 2 big rivers. It is very mountainous. Its topography and its geology is not really lending to building massive underground systems like Beijing or Shanghai. Although now Chongqing does have many lines and many of them do go underground. A large part of Chongqing's on-rail fast transportation infrastructure is still above ground. The line that you're looking at that has this station in the residential building is line 2, and it's a green colored line. It's one of those earlier lines we have built in Chongqing. Planning for the light rail was done by a specific department related to transportation. Then building buildings is under the jurisdiction of Planning Bureau. But these 2 organizations don't exist at the same place and they don't really communicate, and that was the time before internet. So basically back then there wasn't any information infrastructure allowing different departments of the government to communicate very fast or know what each other is up to. There was a developer who wanted to build a residential building for sale in that location. Everything was ready, all paperwork's done, and they got a permit to build that building and they've already started digging foundation. And then they got stopped by the department that's building light rails, telling them our light rail is gonna go through that site, so you can't build there. And the developer was like, I didn't know that. In my whole process of getting all my permits ready, nobody told me. I have already invested money in it. You can't just do that to me. He went to Planning Bureau to complain, and the Planning Bureau was like, we didn't know. The monorail is gonna get built and it's gonna go right through your site. So the city planning people and the light rail building people and the developer had to sit down in the same room and discuss a solution. And the city cannot sacrifice the infrastructure for one building, and also the fact that they really cannot reroute this line anywhere else. If you've been there, you see the topography, you instantly understand. One side is mountain, the other side is river. You cannot create more land that exists in between. Magic in Harry Potter does not exist in our world. And the city planning people eventually decided, because the developer came first and he didn't do anything wrong, he shouldn't suffer any form of monetary loss because of this project. They changed the zoning and the permit they gave this person, allowing him to build extra stories that wasn't in the initial plan to compensate. Because once the train goes through the building, the immediate above and below couple of floors will completely be unusable for residential purposes because of vibration noises and any kind of safety concern. So they changed the permit, allowing this developer to build more floors to sell so that he wouldn't really have a loss. And then they also zoned these couple of floors above and below the railway station as you cannot sell it as residential units. You can only do it as warehouses. And I think the light rail company actually bought a couple of floors using them as their office space and stuff. And then obviously it has to be redesigned. Its structure needs to be worked out so that it's safe. Soundproof needs to be put in place. So those couple of floors above and below are not designed as the normal residential building. Eventually, three parties were all happy with their plan and they went ahead. So as the building was being built, that part was also being built to accommodate the light rail that's going to go through. And eventually you got that thing that looks really weird, where you have a building and you have a station and two basically trains that go through this building all the time. That really is the story of the second line Liziba station of Chongqing monorail. So it is definitely not somebody built a building first and then the monorail came later and they dug a hole. That does not work. And for Chongqing locals, this light rail station has been there for 2 decades. Nobody really thought much of it until somebody, a couple of years ago, decided that this should be a really spectacular thing that they film and put out on whatever social media, and it blew up first within China, then internationally. Now everybody who travels to Chongqing wants to see this thing, to the point that the city actually built a platform just under that station right by the river so that people can stand there and watch. Previously, there was nothing like that. It was just a normal sidewalk. And even cross the river, on the other side of the river, there are everyday people lining up just to take those ridiculous videos when they open their mouth and then the train goes into their mouth. Now, why do I know it? Because it kind of was my dad's idea with a couple of his colleagues. So my dad was the city planning people in the story. It was just one thing that happened in my dad's work, and he never really thought much of it until many years later, this place got famous. And he wasn't even aware of that until I asked him, because I saw too many people taking videos of Liziba station. One day I just remembered my dad used to be working at the time when this thing got built in city planning, and everything that gets built in the city, residential, commercial, industrial buildings, needs to go through city planning to get their permit to follow the zoning bylaw and stuff. So that's why I was like, do you know, Dad, like what happened with that station? He's like, yeah, I know, like I had a meeting with them. I'm like, okay, cool, tell me what happened. So there's no hard proof because it's decades ago. There's no digitized whatever record of their meeting. If you want hard proof, I don't have any. But then there's no reason why my dad should lie to me about what happened. Then, next part of this video, I want to quickly mention the spectacular night light view of Chongqing. When you look at a live stream, the last bit when he was on the boat and then he had the drone flying over, it is looking at Yuzhongqu, which is the old city center, the most ancient Chongqing, that is at the two rivers, Jialing and Yangtze. And that part of the city is very hilly, very stone and mountain heavy. It naturally has buildings built upon that topography, therefore it looks very different from a flatland city, where if you look at it from an elevation point of view, you always just see one side and one height kind of covering one edge of the city. But because of the topography in Chongqing, you just see the layered look, and you basically see more lights that's being put into one side of the land, and that's really the attraction of Chongqing. But it wasn't like that before late 1990s. And in late 1990s, the Chongqing Planning Bureau, City Planning, organized a huge trip that got pretty much every person important working in the city planning to US to see then the most modern and good-looking city in the world. And they traveled around the country to all those famous places from West Coast to East Coast, New York and LA. After that trip, city planning people got back and sat down and they worked a proposal to say that our city, Chongqing, needs to have a lighting up the night project that they named eventually Guangcai Gongcheng. After their proposal, for about 3-5 years, it was like one of the most important projects city planning was doing for Chongqing, to the point where I still remember the late 1990s. Most of the time, my father was not home for dinner. So that was like my memory of the light and color project of 1990s. And now you look at 20 years, more than 20 years later, it looks so spectacular. It all started back then. Obviously, at the beginning, it was nowhere near the amount of light that you get today. Because back then you still didn't have the technology like LED and computer programming to make the building facade literally work as a huge screen for you to say anything, put pictures, put words on. But that was the beginning. That was the initiator of this whole thing. To think that like about 30 years later, a young US YouTuber, live streamer, got to Chongqing and streamed the night view of the city to the whole world. That was actually initiated by a group of people 30 years ago who traveled to the US and got impressed by US city and came back and decided they're gonna have their own version of put lights on the city at night. I was looking at the shot when the drone flies back from him and then just reviews the boat and the bridge and Hongyadong in the perfect framing. I was like, this is surreal. This is so unreal, but it's happening. And it happened. This is just a snippet of history. Everything that happens for a reason type of situation. And since I'm already filming this video talking about Chongqing's cityscape, I want to add a little bit here just as a out of the conscience of me being a human. You have seen the brilliant castle called Hongyadong, almost out of Ghibli's animation Spirited Away. It was developed by a developer who used to actually be a very famous hot pot chain store owner. But anyway, her story is another story for another time. It looks great at night, and pretty much it only looks great at night. So my advice, if you ever travel to Chongqing and you want to see this thing, is see it from a boat in the river, see it on the bridge that you see in his live stream, see it cross the river from the other side where you see this big tank-like building, which is a theater. All those vintage points are pretty nice and you have very good photo opportunities. In terms of actually getting inside, if you go into the so-called castle of Hongyadong, you probably wouldn't have that experience because you're inside, you can't see it. And it doesn't look too spectacular during the day when it's not lit because of the structure of that place and how it's situated. If ever there's crowding or big fire happening, which given long enough time, probably one day will happen. You just don't know when. It's just going to be very hard for you to get out of the place if you're trapped inside. I always warn my like to travel people, friends, just to be cautious. If you ever want to travel to Hongyadong, I would highly recommend you go up the levels, take a few photos, see what it's like inside, then get out. Don't stay there for like 4 hours for no good reason, okay? That would be my best suggestion. And obviously don't go there if it's like a holiday, public holiday. It's gonna be impossible to get through that place's traffic. And it really just looks great at night from a distance. I've heard my dad told me how bad rows broke out and how many people actually got into a very big fight between different departments of the government back then when that project got approved. Fire brigade people weren't happy. City government wants to push it. It was very messy. My suggestion, go in, go out, don't stay. So if you clicked into this video to know more about the station and then something about the night view of Chongqing, now you know it. Thank you for watching this video. We may not see each other ever again on internet. If that's the case, have a great day whenever you saw this video and wherever you are. Then let's get to the last bit, to my usual audiences. I was in China from last year, November to end of February this year. And before I left Chongqing, I really wanted to actually go to Liziba station. I went there a few years ago. I took a video, I'll put it here. You see like going through the building exactly as the camera angle as Speed's team had. It was always like going into the station. So it's from the outside. There are two light rails, and the other is the other direction. And if you are basically traveling inside Liziba station out that way, on the inside, closer to the mountain instead of the river, then pretty much 10 seconds after the train started moving and getting out of the station, you're gonna get so close in the train to a residential building that is to your right-hand side, and you're gonna see that apartment that is in the recently finished airing romantic drama 南红, 白敬亭 and 张若楠 drama. The drama itself, I had a lot of problems with, just like its sister drama Hidden Love, and I haven't made a video talking about it specifically, but if anyone wants my opinion, quick opinion is don't watch it. That's why they rented that apartment to shoot her earlier apartment scenes, because it looks spectacular. You have a light rail or a subway that's literally going by our main lead's room. I don't know, cyberpunk city, they really just want to play with that idea. But the fact is, that room, really nobody lives there these days. It's completely rented out to different shooting crews just because everybody knows it looks interesting on camera. So there are constant crews who want to rent this apartment to shoot whatever they need. So this place is basically now just used for filming. I don't know who owns it, but they probably get good money for renting it out. And honestly, you can't live there because literally the train is going by your window every few minutes. How are you supposed to live in that space? The next time I travel back to Chongqing, I probably can go and then just take that video for you so that you will see how close it is in real life when you travel from the train station to passing that building. That should be the end of this video. Thank you for watching Avenue X. For my longtime viewers, please take care. I'll see you in my next video. Meanwhile, live long and happy drama watching. As for everyone else, if you're still here, that was just something I always say at the end of all my videos. Please take care. And if you ever travel to Chongqing, I wish you a very happy and very rewarding trip.